ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to our weekly Unbounded Greatness, where we explore people who have passionately dedicated their lives to their truth, to their love of something, found the greatness inside them and become more than they were before. And I'm very, very delighted to have with me tonight Mr. Phillip Mackenzie, theatre director based in the UK. Phillip, very, very good to see you.
Thank you.
Phillip and I have known each other for more years than either of us are prepared to admit. So it's kind of a very exciting and amazing moment for me interviewing you. Phillip, I think that people would be genuinely fascinated to hear a little bit about the most interesting starting point is how does a guy who grew up in a country town in Australia
Yes.
end up an internationally acclaimed theatre director? The fact is, to give the audience a little bit of information, Phillip has both performed and directed all over the world. You've been involved in art in just about every European country, as far as I understand, including Hong Kong, Dubai, and you'll tell us how many countries. I know you've been teaching youth and teaching theatre to people for many, many years in many, many countries.
Yeah.
And I do know, and I'll probably embarrass you a little bit, that you're a very highly sought after director who's at the, as we say, at the top of your game. And you're now in a luxuriant position where you do the work, or you work with people that you want to work. You're not scraping for work, you do what you want to do. And that's something I'm sure that everybody listening would like to get to in theatre. But the starting point is, how does a guy from a country town in Australia get into theatre? And what did your family and friends think of that when you did it?
Okay, no, I think it's a very interesting question. How a bloke who's brought up in a town of 6,000 people, surrounded by sheep and cattle and dust and sweat and a little bit of blood and gunshot wounds. I think one of the first things is if I think back of it, you know, I was brought up also around the world of rodeos and showgrounds.
True.
And I realized actually I was sort of thinking about this. I was reading a little bit about Jim Sharman, actually. Jim Sharman, who's probably one of Australia's best known directors, Jesus Christ Superstar, Rocky Horror Picture Show, did extraordinary stuff. But he was brought up, his dad had the Jim Sharman boxing tent shows. He used to travel the showgrounds of Australia. So I was brought up in that Cootamundra. We had the biggest rodeos in Australia. And my dad was the rodeo announcer, and we had shows. And then, oops, what's happened to Sheila? All right, okay.
Sorry, that'll happen a bit while people log in and out.
I'll keep going. So there's a certain amount of theatre in those country towns as well. Then you mash that together with a tremendous dose of heat and boredom. Okay, they're quite a fatal combination. Okay, I think when I was 8 years old, I turned to my sister who was going through our gate at coming home from school, and I turned to her and I said, "I got to get out of here soon." And that's when I was 8 years old, so I knew there was a destination. Meanwhile, there was a church across the road, the Catholic Church, which is the largest building in town, and the Catholics were very good at creating wonderful fantasy worlds. So I was brought up in the world of angels and gardens of Eden and devils and hell and Moses and Lucifer. I mean, tremendous stuff. I'd go to benediction every Friday and there'd be insects and hymns and they'd be singing in Latin and just tremendously theatrical stuff. But I didn't think of it like that. I suppose my first real taste was entering. I had a tremendous stutter as a child, tremendous stutter. But at 10 years old, I entered the end of year speech making competition, and I did this and I prepared the speech, etc., etc. And I can remember standing on the stage as a 10-year-old boy, normally stuttering, and everybody's sort of smirking and just waiting for the festival of stutter and stammer to happen. And then for the next 3 minutes, I was like overtaken by a energy which I'd never felt before. And for the first time in my life, I had no stutter. So that was a seminal moment.
Yeah.
That was absolutely seminal.
First time you ever spoke in front of people and overcame what was a very difficult affliction. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was taken, when I was 5 or 6, I could barely do it. My mother used to take me to the nuns on Saturday morning, who would kneel in a semicircle around me and pray that my voice would recover. So it was quite an affliction. I don't have great memories of it, to be honest. But what I do have a memory is standing on that stage and being possessed by a wonderful energy, which was very new to me.
You talk about being possessed and possessed by the stage. I think that something that it will interest a lot of people in Kenya. There is a very, very strong parental guidance, even parental pressure in Kenya. Go to university, get a job. The reality is the jobs are far scarcer, but the parental belief is go to university, get a job, turn out and start sending money home. Right. You went to university at New South Wales University in Sydney, yes. And if I remember correctly, you didn't finish your degree.
No, that's right.
What happened and how did that
Well, I got 2.5 years into my degree, and then one night I went to the theatre. I hadn't been to the theatre, but one night I went to the theatre. It was a company that was just beginning to become famous, just beginning to do a 25-year world tour.
Wow.
Okay. So I sat in that theatre for an hour and a half, row number 7G, and for that 90 minutes, let's talk about what theatre is. It's a dark room, and lights come on, and you go into a whole other world. That's what theatre is. And in that world, a story unfolds, either through image or words or music or lights or whatever. All those things combine. So I was transported to a place that I'd never been transported to before. And when the lights came up, I waited until the 650 people left from the audience. I didn't plan any, and then I made my way backstage. And I found the dressing room of the person who was the creator of this Gothic pantomime that involved all of those elements which I've just spoken about. And I told him very politely that I thought my life had just been changed. And could he, by any chance, teach me how to do what I'd just seen?
That's incredibly brave. And so the impact was that huge after seeing one performance from that particular artist.
It was a seismic, and I tell you why it was seminal. Because when I looked at this world, this whole incredible world unfolding towards me, I remember thinking, wow, there's a whole other way of relating to the world.
Right.
This is these people's jobs. This is what they do for a job.
Yeah.
How incredible. So I'd never been that close to a whole other alternative proposal, how you might be able to live and negotiate your time with as much time that we've got. So here was a world of the imagination, a world of magic and intrigue and power, real power.
Yeah.
And then when we started doing the classes and going to the classes, and you realize this stuff was serious business, very, very serious. It was about humans connecting together, and the artist's name, Mr. Lindsay Kemp, for him, performance and theatre, they were sacred acts of great power and total commitment.
Yeah,
these people devoted their lives. That's all they did. This is another important. This is one more seminal learning point, right? It comes from total and utter obsession.
Right.
That's all they did. This was 24/7.
Right.
So that's the next thing I learned. Okay, if you're going to be a serious artist, that's what your life becomes.
Obsession.
It's not something you clock into at 9 o'clock in the morning and then clock out of at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, right. So it's got to be a completely genuine commitment, absolutely, and it's got to pulse through your blood and your brains, as Lorca would call it, duende. It should cut through your blood like cut glass.
Right, absolutely fabulous. This is amazing. I was speaking with a guest who had achieved Olympic gold medal status 2 weeks ago. And what's fascinating is he said largely the same thing. He said, for 10 years, until I got the gold medal, everything I did was about the gold medal. Everything.
Right.
The egg. If I eat another egg, that gives me 1 gram of recovery quicker than, he said, it was my life. There was nothing else I ever did or thought about. You've just said the same thing about your craft and your art. I also heard a very deep passion coming from you when you just said that. Obsession, passion, and graft.
Totally. Otherwise, you don't have a hope, because in the pursuit of it, you are going to encounter so many obstacles. Right. You know, this is quite off the beaten track. Okay, this is not the status quo at all. In actual fact, it's almost in total opposition to the status quo.
Yes, it is.
Living a life which is devoted to imagination and the craft which it takes to be able to trade off that in the world. And, you know, be prepared for poverty. And I don't think of it as poverty. Just prepare yourself for a series of creative survival strategies.
Creative survival strategies.
Absolutely.
Right.
And as you know, I mean, and it was fine. I mean, one goes on to have a career in the theatre, even though that's the wrong word, I don't even use it. But what one had to do to just survive. I mean, we had to sell paintings as a deaf and dumb painter. I'd probably be placed in prison for that now. Working in burlesque and cabaret clubs and working on the streets of Paris and just all these wonderful experiences just to have enough money to eat for the next step towards the vision, the next step, incremental. So you have to be in a state of total, creative optimism.
So you had the vision and the passion to also, you brought something else to that I think is very important for people to hear. You wanted to be mentored. You wanted to be taught. You knew straight away, I need to learn. I'm going to get around somebody really big and have the balls to say, I want to do this. Yeah. My understanding is you later worked with that guy in another country. Is that true?
Yeah. So what I was very fortunate, because when they left to continue on their world tour, well, they came back to London. Then they took over the world. But somebody who was in that company stayed in. Was already Australian. So he formed a new company, and I was invited to join that company, and I was paid. I was actually paid for the first 4 or 5 months, and the first gig was Monkey and the White Bone Demon performed at the Sydney Opera House.
Wow.
So that was my first step up. That was my first professional thing. So to go back to your original question, after I went to see that first piece of theatre on that night, I did not go back to university ever again. No, because it was pointless.
It was absolutely pointless. Of a bang, cathartic moment for you. That was it. This is what I want to do.
I thought, why? This. I mean, I knew university would buy me the time till I figured out what it was I was going to do. And when I entered university, I did not have a clue. Right. Not a clue. Right. But it bought me time. It bought me really valuable time. It put me in touch with really interesting people. Yeah. Right. Absolutely fascinating. You had some ups and downs. Tell me about the journey to I mean, you took an immense risk. You left Australia and you went to what was a foreign country to you, the UK, and decided to negotiate your way into, or maybe charge your way into, the theatre. How do you get from there to there? What happens when you get to what happens when you take such extraordinary risks? Okay, well, so do you ever think of giving up? Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I arrived at Heathrow on the 6th of December 1979, 7:15 a.m. in the morning. It was grey and it was raining and it was cold. I only knew one person in the United Kingdom who was supposed to meet me at the airport. They were not there. So I had an address. So when I first came to London, this is what I thought would happen. I thought I was going to go from the airport, going to the middle of London. As I came into London, these gates that had art written on them were going to slowly open, and people would be on either side of the road applauding me and beginning to welcome me to the artistic paradise that was London and Europe. I was bitterly disappointed. And after spending 3 or 4 weeks, I began to realize that this was going to be much more difficult than I thought. Absolutely much more difficult.
Right.
Okay, I had enough money for to survive for a month or two. I ended up working as a life model at the Slade College of Art, which is probably the best art college in the world, that was just around the corner from my squat, which was in Bloomsbury in the middle of London. So I happened to be fortunate. I happened to end up off the plane. Here I am in a squat in the middle of Bloomsbury in London, you know, just incredible. So I ended up at Slade, then I worked at more burlesque and cabaret clubs. And then I thought, do you know what? I didn't come 12,000 miles from my home to do this. So I packed my bags again and hitchhiked from London to Paris, and then from Paris to Barcelona. Of course, I knew that Lindsay Kemp was in Barcelona and was going to open some sort of performance installation. So I hitchhiked. I had £100, so I had enough money to get me some of the way. I slept on the side of the roadways.
Wow.
In a sleeping bag just next to the service stations. So when I got up in the morning, I could go and wash my face. And so then I arrived in Barcelona at 4:37 p.m. Went to the Fundación Joe Miró, where the company was having a big installation with their theatre sets, with soundtracks, and sort of an enormous improvisational thing. And then the public would sort of pass through it. So I was handed a costume. So I was basically employed. I was handed a costume and just said, just observe what's going on and join what you can. So I did that.
You took extraordinary risks. You wanted it so badly, you slept on a roadside to get there.
Yeah, but at the time, it didn't feel like an incredible risk at all. It was simply, I need to get to Barcelona. I don't have enough money to do that. Therefore, I will sleep on the side of the road in my sleeping bag. That's fine. I found a dip, and it was quite soft.
Sure, but that's the stories of great entrepreneurs, whether it be in business or in life. That's an amazing unbounded greatness that came out of you. That's a desire to do it that goes far beyond the ordinary. We've only got about 15, 17 minutes to go. I'm going to actually fast forward.
Okay, go.
What do you see as the role of theatre? What would you say to a young Kenyan right now who's... before we start talking about theatre and COVID, which we'll get to towards next. So there's some young Kenyan in Nairobi or Mombasa right now. As you know, I'm in Mombasa. You're in the UK. And there are young people listening to you speaking right now who haven't got a clue, thinking, where's my next 1,000 shillings going to come from? By the way, to my audience, Phillip has been to Kenya. And I do hope that you come again, and
I do as well. I will
to do some theatre training down here. I'm sure we could get a lot of people to come in. What do you say to young artists? What do you say? What do you say to people who think, well, I've got to go and get money. I've got to go and get a job. I need to do this part-time.
Okay. Let's just break your very interesting question down into achievable sections. Because talking about a young artist in Kenya is very different to talking about a young artist in the United Kingdom.
Right.
There's more infrastructure here, even though that infrastructure is in the process of being dismantled and seriously challenged.
Right.
So in a way, I'll sort of give you a generic, because, you know, Kenyan culture is it's almost a polar opposite of what is here.
In theatre,
and you have much more joy there, and you have much more community there. So I don't really know how a young artist begins to work his way in the context of that culture. I don't really know. All that I'll just give a sort of more generic answers, which is what I would say here, and which is what actually Stephen Burkhoff told me. He said, listen, all that you need to do is find one other person to work with. Okay, Don't worry about how much they're going to pay. Just find one other person to work with and start. And that's how you will learn. That's how you're going to learn stuff. That's going to keep you excited. But don't do it on your own. It's too hard on your own. Just one other person. And that was a great piece of advice.
Wow.
Really.
For those of you who don't know the name Stephen Burkhoff would be one of the greatest modern theatrical giants who also has done some time in movies, true? Is that a fair?
Yeah, I mean, Burkhoff was a very clever guy because the government, for some reason, the state didn't give Burkhoff money. He had his own theatre company, whatever. So basically what Burkhoff did was he got starring roles in Hollywood films.
He did.
And thought, I don't need it, so I'll have my own money. He was a cantankerous.
Doing what? Really?
Cantankerous bully, but also a wonderfully sensitive, educated, smart guy, you know, and was once again obsessed, completely obsessed.
Yeah. What do you see as the future in theatre, and what it's going through now? What is its role in modern society?
Well, we are at the very beginning of an enormous paradigm shift. At the very beginning. And what happens, and now it's just beginning to sink into people's heads that this is not going to last a couple of months. This is going to last for a number of years.
That's correct.
That there is going to be no normal. Old normal has gone. New normal is beginning its transition in. What that new normal will be, people don't honestly know, haven't got a clue. So this is what is happening here. So the state, the government is putting money into the infrastructure of the cultural institutions, so that they stay alive and they don't go broke. The freelance artists which staff those places are having a much more difficult time. What I think will happen in the future is this. Gradually we'll become used to this new reality. We will have social distance performances. There'll be more site-specific work. There'll be more social distance work. There'll be combinations of digital, analog work. So I think there's a lot of artists trying to figure out at this very moment in time, what's our response to this crisis?
How do we deliver the message online or in combinations of online?
Yeah, it might be online. I mean, the default mode for about the first 3 months was a lot of people delivering monologues in their bedroom via Zoom. And this is all very well, but it has nothing to do with theatre. Theatre is to do with a live, living, human transmission. We go into a space together, we sit together in the dark, and something happens there. And if we're lucky, a synergy and a magic will happen. If we're lucky.
That's right.
That doesn't happen very often. But that's
emotions and transformation. Provocation.
It's a very primal thing. It's no different to us sitting in the caves with a fire going, doing shadow plays on the wall. It's not much different to that. Right. So I think what will happen, and I published something on Facebook, is that I think gradually, because people are very tender and very raw, that people are going to be much more open to these human communal experiences than they have been previously.
Well, you also were entrenched in COVID. You were directing a major show of a Turkish activist, a very, very big name in Turkey. And my understanding was you had 30 or 40 dates booked for that piece of work in Europe. Had started playing to audiences, if I remember you telling me correctly, 6,000 to 1,000 people per night.
Yeah.
Bang, shut down, stopped.
Shut down in, we did the first 4 performances, came back here for I think a 5-day rest to go and start the next thing. Bang, cut.
Right.
Okay, now what would have happened with that performance is, because Mehmet Ali Arabara was a very famous man in Turkey before he had to leave. Those first performances, 20 or 30, would have generated more and more and more. And I know that Canada was interested. I know that Australia was interested. These Turkish communities are very strong. Once again, the whole thing gone.
Wow. Yeah. Let me ask you a question, quite a provocation. we both know that Namet is do you think artists are dangerous? Do you think that artists are there to provoke society and provoke different paths of thought?
Yeah, I think it depends what kind of artist you are. I think if you're an artist that does a musical or is directing a musical, I don't think you're going to do much provocation. You're going to do a lot of entertaining, which is also a necessary part, okay? You're going to have other artists who are working much more left field, who are only interested in provocation, you know, agitation, stimulation. Okay, they're never going to be part of the mainstream. Sometimes you get examples of people who sort of start oscillating with the two together. So it just depends what sort of artist you are. I mean, I'm much more think that art should be there to provoke and to move, and that when somebody comes and sees something you've made in the theatre, that how they leave is a little different to when they walked in, at best.
Philip, talk to me about simplicity. I know that when you and I share thinking, it's a word that passes between us very commonly. And I would say that with, for example, something that I've paid a lot of attention to in life, which is music, it's the capacity of the greats to get it and reduce the art down to its simplest, most powerful essence. Yes. If I throw you that ball, what comes up for you in terms of your craft, in terms of learning theatre, and in terms of what makes great performance?
Absolutely. I mean, I think simplicity, and that one is always, okay, here's an interesting thing. Once you trust yourself, which takes maybe 20 years, takes about 20 years of practice.
20 years to trust yourself.
Yeah, just like I could trust myself. Okay, that's to do with learning the craft. It's to do with an interaction of 20 years with audience. You become a little more carefree about it, and also you become smarter and you become clearer about your intention. And the clearer you are about your intention, what you're asking of people, what you're asking of yourself, then the shorter that line is. Right. More clean that line is. Right. And it really is. I mean, I remember Lindsay Kemp was always about less is more. All movement is a journey to the point of stillness. Because at that point, that's where we invite the audience in. But simplicity is a really difficult thing to begin with, because you have to know what you're doing, or you have to be okay to not know what you're doing, but knowing what you're shooting for. It's a very, very, very delicate dance, and you can't go, I'm going to try and be simple. I just need to have clarity of intention.
Clarity, yeah.
And I'd also like to add something else here. Okay, sure. This is very important, and it's side by side with simplicity is this other word which you've heard me use a lot, called pleasure. Pleasure. Yes. So when I run a rehearsal room, there's only really one rule in the room, and that is pleasure. That you are to get as much pleasure as you can from this, which comes from one simple thought. And that simple thought is, I really want to be here.
Right.
Do you know how difficult that is? I really want to be here. And that's another 20 years worth of work.
Is it really? Is it difficult?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to be very mindful. You've got to be incredibly present. Absolutely. Otherwise, you're going to get obstacle.
Right.
Yeah.
Inside. Right. What an incredibly stunning thing to say about the mindset of theatre. Tell us about the best workshop you've ever attended.
I've attended. Attended. Oh, listen, those first workshops of Lindsay Kemp in Australia. Talk about first workshop. Talk about having a high bar. Nobody's ever got close to that. Oh, nobody. Really? No, absolutely nobody. Come on, he was an absolute master.
Genius.
Sure. Oh, really? I mean, even Burkhoff's workshops. Okay, and then you go, then I think, so there's another very famous practitioner, Polish practitioner, changed the face of experimental contemporary theatre, called Jerzy Kotowski, who's dead now. His final thing was bringing shamans from South American forests and working with them in New York. So I did a 10-day, 12-hour day workshop with one of his participants, with one of his members, and we were given no instruction. The doors were locked, and it was just impulse. What? So that was quite magical. I learned a lot from that.
Really?
The complete opposite of Lindsay, who was always feeding in wonderful words and feeding it in with music. About this is the complete opposite. That you have to generate this amongst yourselves without any aids whatsoever. So that was very significant. So they're two quite opposite things. And then lots of workshops in between. And then gradually out of that, you begin to craft your own technique of what it is, gradually.
I get a sense of huge dedication to learning.
Oh, completely.
Attend, work.
Absolutely, yeah. Notebooks. The only thing I cannot throw away are my notebooks. I have kept a work notebook every year, everything since 1980.
Wow.
Okay, cannot throw them away. They are sacred documents.
Right.
Which charts something very interesting.
Right. Last word of advice. We've got 5 minutes remaining.
Okay.
Last word of advice for anyone who's wondering, what the hell do I do? I've been touched by I want to dance. I want to perform. You're in Kenya, you're anywhere in the world, it doesn't really matter. We won't make a distinction. What would the master tell the student right now? If I threw myself at your feet, threw myself in front of you and said, please, what should I do? I want to dedicate my life to art. I want to be good at theatre.
Okay. I would say, tell me a little bit more about what it is you want to be good at. What is it? What do you want? What bit of theatre do you want to be good at? What is it? Do you want to be good at doing the movement? Do you want to be good at... So I try and get as specific as possible. Otherwise, it's sort of a wafty, fluffy dream. And once you're specific as possible, then you know what it is you've got to do. Right. And then I would say, so what's stopping you from doing that? And the only thing that's going to stop you is what's going on between your ears.
Right.
Okay. What's stopping you from doing that? Exactly nothing. People in the West often use money. You know.
That's the same here.
What are you talking about? You say you want to improve movement. You want to learn. So I don't see any money blocking you. You've got time. You've got intention. Go.
Yeah. I think that's all over the world. I get regular contact from young people wanting, and I'll share this with you. And the thing they say, Philip, is I want to do whatever that is. The next word is the big B word. You know where I'm going. But, and then it trots out. But I don't have money. And yet we know that all over the world, great lives, great art, great business has been created by people who had very limited resources, but had a burning passion and desire to just do the thing. I love what you said about being specific. When we're specific, we know what to do. Okay, I want to be a radio announcer. Great. Right. Write scripts and start timing them for 6 hours.
That's right. That's right.
You can do that in your room. You can do that in your room.
That's right. And you do it you do it over and over and over. And then you'll get better at it.
Yes, that's right. It's that simple. I met a TV announcer about a year ago in Nairobi. Very, very good one, well known. And I said, how did you get started? She said, nobody would give me a job, so I turned up here at the TV station for 1 year and volunteered. They didn't even give me fares. She said, I fronted up every single day for a year and put the rubbish bin out on the set. Whatever somebody gave me to do, I did it. Now I'm a TV presenter.
Fantastic. That's it. That's it. That's how you do it.
Is it luck or you make your own luck?
Is it? I think it. I think I decided with a friend. I think it's God. That's called luck. God is energy multiplied by chance. Energy and chance. I'm afraid unless you're putting a lot of energy out there, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, right. That's a very definitive comment. We're going to wrap up now, and I think that that's probably the most important thing that anybody who listening to you tonight in any field, whether it's art, theatre, your specialty, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard a theatre person, the top of their game, give you some very, very powerful tips tonight. Passion, energy, simplicity. Being teachable is clearly a big message that you've put out tonight, Philip, that just go to people, do workshops, get mentored, ask questions, and work. It's been absolutely fabulous to have you. Yeah, please.
I was going to say, and work with pleasure and joy and generosity. Okay, very important.
Really love doing it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very important.
I can't wait to see you again. We've got less than a minute, so I better be quick. Ladies and gentlemen,
okay,
great to have Phillip Mackenzie from the UK join us tonight on Unbounded Greatness. This will now be posted on my pages. Learn from it. Get in touch if you'd like to know more, learn more, and be more. It's a journey, and you've just heard a master talk about how he conducted his Unbounded Greatness and his journey from nowhere to being the top of his game in theatre globally. Philip, thank you very, very much for your time. Absolute pleasure. We shall talk soon.
Take good.
Got a very erstwhile person here in Chico that wants to work with you, and probably many more. Lots of love, Philip. Lots of love to you and family. Thank you for giving us those insights.
My pleasure.
That's it from Michael Flynn, Mentor. It's been another Unbounded Greatness. Thank you to Phillip Mackenzie. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.